everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Shine From the Inside's community podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Collington, and today we're going to be talking about moon cycles, which is probably one of my favorite areas to talk about. Probably has something to do with the fact that my rising sign is Cancer, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. Probably also has to do with I love Sailor Moon as a kid, and so anything to do astrology based I do really love. So in general, it's nice to be talking about the moon. The moon has a lot of power that a lot of us haven't really been aware of most of our life because it's looked at as a lot of mumbo jumbo for some people and part of like witchery, and so most people just kind of throw it out the window when they're trying to think about logics, and they're not really basing it so much off of intuition. So it's interesting when we start talking about the moon, because we're going to come to see in this video that it is proven that it affects us in a great deal of ways, more than we even might know, but also some ways that are little that we don't even know that they could be playing out in our life, but also how it even affects just nature and animals. And so we're going to go over a few things, but first it'll be the moon and its energy, its power, what it's going on, how it's been used throughout time, but then also about the energy, that how it's always changing around us, the moon's history, its moon phases, and then we're going to go into the different ways that you can apply it depending on what's going on for the phase at the time, and then we'll talk about how it applies, because what happened with zodiacs, so the moon is always transitioning through different signs throughout the year, and not even just throughout the year. Some people might think that the moon is only in a certain phase, just like the sun, like in December we might only hit Sagittarius, but no, the moon, because its rotation is that much faster, right? So it actually goes through the signs rapidly. Sometimes in a week you might go through half of the signs. It depends on how quick or where it is that they're in throughout the signs, right? So anyways, then we're going to discuss how you can use the moon throughout your life, like the different ways that you can apply some of this knowledge. We're going to go over special events as well, and why those kind of matter more than just a typical moon phase. And then we're going to go over some ways that you can connect deeper with the moon, okay? And so, as like always, I usually start the video by being like, the stuff that I talk about in this video is not something that I'm saying you have to live this way or understand this way. These are the tools that help me through my self-development as a woman, as somebody who is highly emotional and highly intuitive. Me learning what's going on with the moon, very eerily accurate. A lot of the time, what's happening with me is almost like a precursor of the energy that's going to happen in the world, or is already happening in the world, and I see it because I have a ton of earth in my chart. And so birth chart's going to matter, and eventually in the future we'll talk about that, but because I have a lot of earth in the chart, what means is whatever the moon is doing, it is very much impacting me, because I am grounded with this earth. So I feel what it's doing to the earth. I feel the moon's energy very potently. And by me working with it, it helped me not to even just understand the moon and the connection to the earth, but also connection to my own cycles inside as a woman, okay? And so we're going to get into that now, but I just wanted to go over the fact that it's okay if you don't believe in this stuff. It's okay if you don't want to work with it. It's okay if you think it's all hoo-ha and not that important. The main thing about this in all of my videos is to make us understand that these really simple things that have been overlooked by a lot of society, they actually all mean something. They all hold reverence, they all hold importance, they all hold some kind of message that can help us understand our life. And as we get going through the moon, you'll see that the moon phases can impact people in very drastic different ways, especially a full moon. And so it's interesting, because when we don't know these things are at play, certain things can come up, and we are driven by certain energies around us, and we don't know why some themes come up. Understanding this can make people really start to look at their own patterns and how the moon might be affecting themselves. So it's not to say that you have to use this. It's not to say that this is the only belief or the only information out there. I'm only providing my own research, my own side of it. I highly recommend, after all of my videos, that if you are interested in any of these concepts or any things I bring up, to look it up yourself, to do the research yourself, to dive in deep, because sometimes that's the best way that you can connect even more with these things, right? Is by looking into them, is by researching, is by finding your own connection with it, okay? Trusting your own intuition. I'm never going to say my way is the right way. I'm never going to say I know everything. I'm never going to say that you have to listen to me and that's what's going to make your life amazing. No, I'm not going to say that. But I am going to be honest about the fact that these things do matter. And when I started my self-development, my spiritual development, and following my purpose, a lot of it came with understanding what phases we were going to be facing in humanness, which these things come about because they are phases. They are things that we are all collectively going through together, just in our own different path. So this is a way that when you are in your own moment and your own phase, even though we're all kind of collectively going over these themes, how you can pinpoint which this theme means for you, and so you can apply it. But also sometimes these potent energy portals that we hit, they are amazing, massive transformation energy windows that almost the universe is being given to us that if you're not aware of, you're not using for their full potential, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do any kind of witchery. It just means even thinking about what's going on with you. It just means even being tapped into how your body's handling it or what your life is doing at the time. It's not about you needing to per se be a witch or to get into Wiccan or paganism or anything like that. Understanding the moon and its cycles in your world is literally just the same as you understanding some things about your internal health, like your blood work, okay? A lot of these makeups, we don't know what's happening until we look into the breakdown of it, and some of these breakdowns are going to help you understand the energetic side, but it could also, because the energy applies to all levels, so you can understand how the energy affects you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, how all of these things are kind of rolled into one, all right? And so, moving along. All right, so first we're going to start with the moon and its energy. Pretty much its power is intuition. The moon, for a long time, everybody knows, the sun is about action, and the opposite of that is about not action, right? So if you look at, how you can really easily know what the moon is about, is because it's going to be the opposite of the sun. The sun illuminates, which does bring action, yes, but the moon illuminates in a way that is like inwardly. That's why a lot of this stuff you have to do some inward reflection, because the moon is about more internal. It's more like if sun is yang, then the moon is yin. And yin is an internal state where we are doing a lot of that regurgitation or processing inwardly rather than rushing forward, okay? And that's why some moon phases, you're going to see that they might be more of a yin state versus a yang state. And what that means is the energy to use them is not going to be rushing ahead for everything. We're not always constantly supposed to be rushing ahead, which is largely what our society teaches us, right? Rush, 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 get as much done. There's hardly ever any time for the yin cycles. The rest, the integration and wisdom, you're integrating your lessons and your wisdom in order to apply them in your life. If you don't have rest, if you don't have time to actually take that time to properly let things saturate into you, then a lot of it gets missed, which is why a lot of us repeat cycles, which is why a lot of us don't grow the way that we think we can grow quickly just because we dealt with something, because we actually didn't take time to apply that learning that we got, right? And so the moon, pretty intense. In a lot of things it's going to be, especially because the moon is not in the active sunlight day, which is usually going to be your conscious, right? Like whatever's conscious is usually out in the day. Nighttime, we're dealing more in the subconscious, the more unconscious. That's where our dreams happen, right? That's where we're more in the void of night, which night, the moon guides us through, but sometimes the moon's not there. Sometimes we're completely in the dark. I like to call that phase the womb phase, which we're going to get into. But the point is that moon in itself, its energy, is about being in that kind of area of the subconscious and unconscious where things are not as logical. Things are a bit more mystical given, right? You're going to have a lot more things that maybe you don't understand because they are kind of in an unclear tone until you figure out what tone they're talking to you in so you can understand it, right? Like, you can't understand when somebody's speaking if they speak a different language until you kind of learn a little bit about that language. And the moon, she has her own language. She does speak in a lot of symbolism. She does speak in a lot of emotions because guess what? She governs the waters, right? We can see the moon affects tides. We can see the moon affects different water flows. And so if it affects water like that, right? Water is largely emotions and feelings, okay? Emotions and feelings. So when it gets stirred up, it can stir up a lot inside of us. And if we aren't aware of that, right, we don't even know that that is something unconscious or subconscious happening inside of us. Which again, why a lot of these phases, some people can be going through a lot and not even know that it's always around a moon, a certain type of moon cycle or a certain specific sign and that moon phase, right? So what's interesting is because when we talk about the moon and water, how much are humans made up of water? We used to say we were like 93% water, but it's more like 65% they say now because we have like the bone and different structures. But if you look at blood alone, our life force, it's 90% water. So when the moon is affecting other forms of water, you gotta know it is doing something psychologically or physiologically to you because of that. And it will affect you psychologically because of the fact that it is tinkering a little bit. Not on purpose. That's just what she does. She influences us from afar, okay? And I will talk about her as a lady. That's just going to be my personification of her. But at the same time, you do not have to put a gender on the moon. But the point is that she does affect us in a great deal of ways, in a way that many of us fail to even want to acknowledge. If you were to look into research to understand what I'm talking about, you would see that most people who work in the health industry or who work in like policing and whatnot, they have the most calls about the craziest stuff on full moons. And literally lunatic is driven by the form of lunar, right? And lunar is to literally lose their mind, and some lunatic anyways. But the point is that for a long time, we have known that the moon can drive people crazy in some ways, right? And so if you were to look it up, a lot of the time that's because most people do get drastically affected. It not only affects those bloods, but it affects like that circadian rhythm that we have. And why a lot of older people have a lot of harder time through these cycles is because it does really warp them, okay? And so the moon, if you just understand that power alone, you can see how maybe it might be influencing you, but not so much in like a negative way, just in a little subtle way, right? And so, and if it affects something like that subtly, then it also is affecting the other things around us subtly, okay? So we're going to move on to the next phase, which is going to be pretty much how the moon was also used around the world, okay? So one of the reasons why our moon has different seasonal names is because it's been pretty much thought of as like a clock, the calendar in the sky. And so for years, like historically, different cultures have used it to map where they are in the cycle of the year, right? And a lot of that was marked by growing cycles. So a lot of this is either, what I'm going to say now is either going to be a growing cycle that comes out or something that naturally is happening in nature, which could be animals. But anyway, so each one has been used to pinpoint where the year was in their growth cycle, linking things back to the wheel of the year. This is something that I'll talk about in the future as well, but it goes into what each month's moon cycle is regardless of your zodiac. So each month we have a different moon that happens, okay? And so we have, obviously, 12 different moon cycles that this is going to talk about. And each one on its own means that this month that this moon resides in, that's what this month overall has this energy of. So if you even just know these basic things, then you know for like the month of January, these are the list of things you should focus on. And then you can create goals based off of what that is. So you're not forcing yourself into doing these goals that are maybe not accurate for where we're at. So one of the things we can think about is like our start of the year, New Year's resolutions, okay? January is called the wolf moon, all right? And so the wolf moon is about inner power. Okay, it's about insight, accessing your journey or assessing your journey, and then protection. It is not. Did you hear anywhere in there that it's about action and forward movement immediately, rapid growth? No, it's not. No. So when we have things like the New Year's resolution come out, a lot of people start their new year and they start forcing themselves to move really rapidly in a winter cycle, which January is. A winter cycle, that is not the key thing. The winter cycle is more about that integration and getting ready so that when it is time to take off, you know exactly the plan you're going to take, okay? So when we force ourselves to do a bunch of new stuff and hard stuff in January, good in my area, I'm in the northern hemisphere, okay? And so when we force ourselves to operate outside of a natural growing cycle, it can be really hard on us. Knowing that these are the things that you should focus on, right? Even though they're very generic, I know, and there's not that many of them, you can use that to understand that that cycle in itself, the wolf, is not about doing something crazy, okay? When we move on to February, the snow moon, it's about new beginnings, change, reflection. If you were to do magic, one of the things that would be the best for this cycle is any kind of candle magic. And why that is because in February, we're still in the darkest time of the year. And so candles, they're a way of lighting the way. They're a way of remembering the light and bringing it back. So even just using candles to go to bed or wake up with, much easier, better on your nervous system in general, because fire and red light are way better for us for when we are downgrading or upgrading. If you are ADHD, different colored lights might be better for you, but there is something about the flame. There's something about the flame that is really meditative for us. So again, in February, it's a snow moon, so still you're not seeing anything. That's when largely, even on the island, you would think that we'd be done, but no, January, February is where we might get our actual snow. And versus December, I might not see snow in December, but where I'm from, in Fort St. John, they get snow all the way up until you can see it as early as September, October. And you might not get it. They still have it there and might not be gone until June. They're melting now, but it might still be there for quite a while, right? And so in different areas, you have snow for a very long time. And so you're not actively being told that you should be running ahead. You're still in that hibernation, collecting yourself kind of phase. And so I like these things because it helps remind us what actually energy we should be focusing on versus what society has taught us, because they want us to feel like we're machines. When we're machines, we don't have growing cycles. Machines just operate 100% at 100% all the time. Optimal capacity, okay? And yet, in Earth, in nature, we see that it is not true for any living being out there, nor us. So, because we aren't from nature, right? And so when we force ourselves, it makes us unhealthy and burnt out, because technically we are supposed to have these pausing phases, these more internal slowdown phases versus really hard working ones, okay? So next one is March. March was the worm moon, all right? And so that one is about, this is when the earth is technically starting to warm up, right? So this is when the ground is starting to thaw. So you're going to get intentions, growth. Light and dark is a big thing because things are coming up from the dark, right? Like the worm is surfacing from the dark abyss of the ground. And so balance is a big thing. If you were to work with magic, water is a good one here, because technically water is pouring almost life into this new growth that you want to see come out for the next phases, because we're going to water our intentions, which pretty much that's the first word we started with, right? Intentions. So we want to water these things. So anything that you can do to water yourself, because think about it as nourishment, in watering magic, nourishing, healing, that kind of stuff, really good for those things. And so this is where even in March, it is not saying do anything. You know what I'm saying? It's just saying you have intentions and that you're starting to grow, because the starting bud of a seed is just sprouting at some time and it's developing that root system. It's not doing everything crazy. You can't see it above the surface yet. So an intention is just a planting of a seed. What do I want me to take action with in these coming months that are about action taking? All right. And then April, we have the pink moon. We just did this one because it's May 1st today, today is not only a Sabbath, Beltane, it is a full moon in Scorpio today. And so it's was a really great day for me to choose to do this because I wanted it to have that amazing kind of moon energy attached with what we're talking about. And so April's the pink moon, and that's rebirth, discovering, fertility, goals, and plant magic. If you were going to do magic, plant magic pretty much means that you could plant seeds with intentions of what that property of that plant is for, and you want that to bloom in your life. So say that you're somebody that wanted to do a lot of protection or something like that, you could plant rosemary. If you're somebody that really wanted a lot of relaxation or peace in your life, you could plant lavender. Those kinds of things, especially because they're hardy, they can be started earlier on in the seasons versus some of the more sensitive things you have to wait until later in the year. But point about the pink moon is because at that time, when the earth is coming alive, we have so many things blossoming. The pink moon is about pink flowers pretty much. And so it's talking about flowers coming out and the first blooms of spring, and to see that the earth is kind of waking up. So this is when we are starting to kind of plan our goals and go in the direction of that new thing. The rebirth is we are now changed. Whatever happened in that winter time, we are not the same person. When we go into a winter phase, that is our dark seasons, right? It's when we have the least amount of sun. Dark seasons are about integration. Again, thinking about the nighttime. When we are in the night, when we are in that womb, it is a time for us to kind of cook ourselves up differently. If you don't take time to integrate, if you don't take time to go into the lessons and do the soul work in the winter, when it comes to spring, you might be repeating your pattern because you didn't learn. And so when this rebirth happens, it's not as profound as it could be. When you actually take time to put these steps together, it creates a massive change for a rebirth. So I am never the same when the winter ends. Like, there is a massive upheaval that happens to me after winter ends. And one of them was this, right? In the beginning of the year, I started doing these. And that was me coming out of my winter phase. And we all have different seasonal things. I will get into that later. That's not what this is about. The point is just recognizing that these phases really slow us down. When you start really realizing how they use these moons, they sped us up. They made us really busy in the winter when it wasn't supposed to be that time, so that you couldn't make the most to benefit yourself from the warmer seasons, because you're going to be technically bogged down for not taking the time in the winter. All right, Mayflower. May is the flower moon. Again, this one is about flowers, but different flowers. Most of the time, like for here where I am, the pink moon, around that time, we have a lot of cherry blossoms, which are usually pink. So I see a lot of those, but the flower moon itself is about abundance, romance, fun, celebration, elementals. So you can do elemental magic. So anything working with the fairies or anything kind of like that. I'm not encouraging you to work with the fae. Let's be honest. The fae, out of all of the elementals, you have to be careful with. So that's not something I'm educating you on today. But the point is just to say that that is what's good to work with, because elementals at that time, everything's coming online, and a lot of nature spirits, especially because if you know about the fae, they're what's helping everything blossom, right? They're going out there and waving their little magic and helping create abundance. That's one of the reasons, if you are somebody that likes a really good crop or harvest and stuff like that, giving a little offering to the fairies not only can help protect yourself from like trickery, it can also help you to have a better harvest, because technically you're being like, here's my little payment to you to help my garden grow as bountiful as it could, right? And so anyway, that's the phase of May. So that's where we are right now. That's why around this time people feel real good, because you do have that energy. The energy of this moon phase and this month itself is overall jubilation. Like, that celebration isn't a lot of this. So because at this point now we're like fully online. Like, it is fully, we're now moving away from just being in spring and spring awakening. We're now starting that summer, the trickling and welcoming of summer. We're not full blown into it because that's not until the summer equinox. But right now we are definitely in the arrival of, that's what Beltane is. It's the midway point between the spring and summer equinox, and it's welcoming pretty much summer now, the starting of summer. So then we have June, which is a strawberry moon. At this time, strawberries are usually blooming. Lots of blossoms out there for you to eat at that point. So this one is about manifesting, because at that point you want to see tangible results happen. You want them to become physical reality. Like, the strawberry is no longer just the flower. It now is the fruit. It's something you can eat. So there's also this Gratefulness, because you have a bounty happening already at this time. Fruitfulness, you see all the ways that your fruit's growing, right? So then again, this is a good one for nature magic in general as well. If you wanted to plant or anything like that, or give back to nature, any kind of workings with nature is going to be super powerful in this phase, because nature is most abundant and alive. July, we have our buck moon. This is about inner fire, long-term goals, leadership, and you can use sun or fire magic in this one. And why that is because the buck, at this time, there's a lot of bucks happening, and some of them, I don't know, I think it might be their mating season. And so one of the reasons is because there is a lot of stuff, there's a lot of potency happening. And so anytime it's a fire area, anytime there's fire involved, it is a time for action. It is a time to like move forward. And so by the time we get into July, this is when you want to put a lot of that hard work into those long-term goals, so that when it comes to winter time, you don't have to establish it as hard. You don't have to do as much. You have it more cemented at this point, right? And then also leadership. This is the time when you want to take ownership the most of your life. This is the time you want to step up, because the buck is a male, right, deer? And they are usually like leaders. They're classified as like wearing crowns on their head, right? And so part of it is like becoming that own, I wanted to say like king or queen of your life, to really realize like, is this how I want to rule my kingdom? Is this what I really want happening? If not, then how do I change this? And this is a really big timing, because you've had this rebirth from spring, right? And now you're like, okay, this is actually these little things that you've maybe implemented or haven't yet. Some things may have come out even more clear, that at this point you're ready to go on different changes. And so anyway, August, we have the sturgeon moon. This is a lot of the time when we're going to start seeing fish make their that little journey that they make. What's it called? It doesn't matter. The point is, they're going to start spawning. They're going to start their spawning season. And so a lot of those are going in hardcore action, right? So August is a really big month for that. But one of the reasons, it's not just about that, it's about perseverance. So if you've already set up these goals like you did in June or July, it's going to be about persevering with them no matter how hard they are. A lot of those fish, after their spawning season, they die because they give it all they got, right? We don't want you to do quite that hard, because I don't want you to die while you're doing your goals. The whole point in establishing healthy goals and whatnot is that you can keep up with them for the long haul. Same with planting. I could plant 1,000 plants out there, but it's not how many things I can plant. It's how many I can take care of and maintain. So it's not about starting all these major big things. It's about what you can maintain and what you can actually have balance in, all right? And so around this time, freedom matters, gathering matters, because you're going to start getting your first harvest. Even gathering nuggets of knowledge, gathering nuggets of celebration, things that you succeeded in or didn't. It's just about the gathering in itself. And then this one's good for weather magic, which we don't need to talk about. If you're into magic, that's something that you will know how you can use that. But the point is that, because around here, some people may be wanting rain. They might be wanting more sunshine, depending on how their crops are doing, right? And so anyway, you could also, just in case you wanted to, like if there's a storm, that's a really powerful energy. So using any of that kind of energy in your workings helps break through. So anyway, September is the harvest moon, because again, that's pretty much the ending. That's when we're getting hit in fall, right? That's when we're about to have our last harvest, which is usually around October. And so harvest moon is about harvesting, obviously. Gratitude, because you got so much, right? And that's about reflecting on everything that the year so far has given you. Balance, sharing your hearth and home, okay? And so September is a really big, was one of my favorites, because it's usually the last time I get to see my family before I'm down on the island for the rest of the year. And so it is a big time that I go up there and I help them with the rest of their garden, or doing things on the land that they need help with that I don't have the same responsibilities down here with. It's amazing because, at this time, a lot of people can start thinking that it's so much about moving ahead again and planning goals, which you can. But a big part about where you want to be in fall, especially going into fall, is a lot of gratitude and recognizing where you already had so much abundance. even if you didn't have things exactly turn out the way that you wanted, so much can happen in that phase that helps you understand that you did get a lot. Even when we get things that we don't really want, there's a lot of lesson and learning in that makes us pretty rich with experience, right? And that's something still to be grateful for. Okay, so then October we have the Hunter's Moon, which is about strength, change, endurance. This one is about protection and transitions because we're transitioning now from the fall to the winter. November we have the Beaver's Moon, which is about preparation. November we're starting to be like, it's time to hunker down. How can I stay in my home and not have to do as much exertion outside of it, right? Security, grounding, and remembrance, because we also have a lot of dates that, we want to pay reverence to, but remembrance isn't just about like Remembrance Day, but it is also about just remembering all that you went through this whole year. It's about remembering, but a recollection also of all of these things, like these checkpoints that you hit that year. And almost the way that the beaver builds its dam, right, with the wood, that's kind of what you're doing by remembering, is you're building your nice little home of all of your things that happened for you in that year. And so remembering is important. We can't really go forward if we don't really remember things. And by that I mean, if you don't remember all of your tribulations, then you probably don't remember your lessons that you learned either, right? If you don't remember all your blessings, then you're probably thinking you didn't probably have a good year. And so you're maybe overlooking a lot of what actually happened for you if you don't remember. And I found that the more that I paid attention to these things happening, the more different things happened for me, because it's almost like your brain's like, oh yeah, they learned that, so now we can move on to something else, right? Versus like, oh, they didn't get the message, let's replay. So then the last one is December. It's the cold moon, and that's just because it's cold, obviously. But it's about completion. Our year is wrapping up at this point, right? It's about renewal, peace, reflection, and shadow work. So December is usually a month that we want to be doing the most reflection, just to see what worked for us this year and what didn't. And that's why when January comes around, it's not about rushing ahead. We have just literally completed a cycle, and the shadow work is looking at the ways that we kind of maybe are still holding ourselves back and why. So when January comes around, it's not about, I'm ready to rush ahead. It's still about, how can I use my inner power and insight to now move my journey in a direction that I want to go for this new year? So yeah, planting these seeds of like where you want to do in January, totally fine. But feeling like aggressive on yourself to have to take action right away, not necessary, because you're still kind of working out the kinks of what you need to change and what you need to do. So yeah, you can see with this that technically we don't have to do anything in the way that we think we do. These help us show each phase and season that we may be in at the time, and it's best to focus on only a few things versus feeling like you have to do everything all at once. Again, this can change a bit depending on the hemisphere you're in, but in the northern hemisphere, a lot of this is going to be true. The only thing that's going to change if you're not here is these dates are going to be a bit different. So January might not look the same as January, but most of these moons are still going to be classified as the same thing, and they're still going to have the same things that you're supposed to pay attention to. The only thing that changes is just when they might occur. Okay, and so that is a list that we use to help understand the foundational kind of energy of the moon from our physical plane, because that's where we are in the earth level of where the energy is at. The ones that I just listed, that's where the earth will be at. Those are our earthly energetic flows, okay? And so the moon then now goes on top of that. The moon is beyond nature's growing cycle. The moon is about intuition, emotions, right? And so when we look into where the moon is sitting in a different placement, right? That is, and then we use that phase on top of that, you can really start to understand what maybe might be the driving factor for energy around you at the time, okay? And so it might be influencing or inspiring us while in that growth cycle, okay? So what does that mean? Energy is always changing and it's always unique. So because our moon is always rapidly adjusting, because each month is not always the same, every single time that we have a moon, it's going to be unique. And it's not just enough to know that the moon is power in the way that I first described it in the first 5 minutes of this video. It's about understanding how many different hats it can wear at different times and how it can activate those things. And so The seasons affect it, yes. The zodiacs affect it. The degrees that the moon is sitting at while in a zodiac affects it. So planets don't just sit at a normal axis because it's rotating. So the difference of where it's rotating, because of my last videos with numbers and angel numbers and whatnot, if you know about numbers, then these placements, these transitions that they are at, their degrees, you can then use those degree numbers to understand how that is exactly impacting us through that zodiac, because those numbers are going to hold relevancy to what that energy of that transit is on, which you don't have to go to that degree. There are people who are professionals that will go to that degree and understand those things. So you can just look up what that moon phase is, and their description of it is going to probably take that into consideration. But if you don't have access to stuff like that and you just look at the moon and understand what phase it's in, this video is going to help you to just have a generic understanding of what you might be better for or how to utilize it, okay? And so I'm just saying that that's why it's important to know that it's not so one size fits all about the moon. It is drastically alternating and changing at all times. And we also have the other factor is that we can have these kind of stelliums happen, which kamikaze events almost of like a multiple different planets are in the same sign all at once while a moon phase happens in that same kind of zodiac that the moon is in, right? And so when we have that happen, it amplifies the energy behind that. It amplifies a lot of the themes behind it. And so now we don't just have one thing that is steering that energy, we have multiple things backing it. And when that happens, it's in forceful momentum, which is why it is important to pay attention sometimes to when we do have major astrological events, because they are going to impact you. You're going to notice a difference, right? And so many moon cycles are extremely unique. Some transitions we don't see ever, sometimes hundreds of years, sometimes ever in the hundreds of years, right? We might see it only once. We just had a few of these happen, not necessarily with the moon, but sometimes the moon amplifies how much that is intense because of whatever sign it's in. But we just had one with Aries. We had lots of things go through Aries. And so when you look into this, you can see that it makes some moons more important to do something compared to other phases, because some moons you're more going to get that this is actually a time for me to be inward and to be doing a reflection, versus when you have 7 planets in Aries, and the moon's in Aries. Oh, this is a time for me to move it. This is a time for me to get my butt in gear. This is a time for me to go, right? Because Aries is the starting zodiac. So Aries is the first momentum. Aries is the seed. Aries is that one energy of like, I'm going to go, and it's ready to move. And so it's interesting because once you get into this, you can understand why some of these things could be a lot more powerful and impactful. And if you're not aware why sometimes you're heightened, this can help you understand. So another reason what that means is that the moon is magical so much that we even women, we have our own lunar cycles, right? And by that I mean, depending on where we are in our menstruation, could be paid almost like we can look at it as that part of a moon cycle as well, because we go through the phases much like the moon does. And a lot of women, when you don't understand your body, right, you don't understand these transitions are going on. So if you don't understand all of your different phases, right, your luteal versus like your ovulation, those kinds of things, right? So if you don't understand those different kind of phases, then you're not going to understand how maybe your hormones or different energy levels are impacting you. And that's the same with the moon. If you don't understand its moon phases, you don't understand how she might be influencing you or not influencing you either. What's amazing about women in the moon is that even if you're not aware of this, one of the things I found cool is to actually know when you start your bleeding cycle, because one of the phases or one of the things that happens is there are different moon cycles that you are purposely in for your bleeding cycle. So there's 4 of them. So technically, if you start your bleeding on a new moon, it's called a white moon cycle. And that means that you're connected more with fertility, ready for new projects, even kids, because new moon energy is about a new beginning. And so if you're bleeding with that moon cycle, that means something for you. Us women, we can shuffle through these different phases throughout our life. So you're not always going to be a white moon cycle. Maybe you will be. But because the moons are always moving around and our months are not always the same, very unlikely that you would be. But for your body to get you back there after you got off of it, means that you're supposed to be in that cycle. Some people will be a red moon cycle, and that's when you're going to bleed with the full moon. This is a more intense one, because this is more like the healer kind of energy. They'll say that this is more like high priestess energy, people who are doing a lot more of like maybe shadow work, or a lot more of the I don't want to say just shamans or whatnot, because anybody could be doing this that doesn't fit into those roles. But this is more like, because full moons are a time of releasing. It's almost like a form of sacrificing, you bleeding on a full moon. You're giving up this blood from yourself when the moon is at its fullest. Is like almost not an offering, but it is an offering in a sense. Your body is offering it up at the same time, which is why it is so powerful, because you're in line with the moon is literally telling you to release, and your body is like, I'm shedding my inner layer with you. So while the moon is shedding herself, well, she's technically not shedding in a full moon, but you are, because she's asking in a full moon cycle, she's asking you to release what all you don't need to go forward. And in your period, we are releasing all that we don't need to for us to go forward. And a lot of that is whatever we dealt with, any emotions, hardships, things that came up since our last period, you are releasing that. And sometimes, depending on the phase, you could be releasing for a few months if it's a really bad one, right? So there are other ones. So it's not just important if you bleed on a full or new moon. A lot of people overlook the other ones. There's a pink moon cycle, which you're bleeding on the waxing moon. So this is before a full moon. So this is in between a new and full moon. And this is, you're ready for transformation, growth, self-reflection, taking action, and ambition. All right. This is a good one because now this is a whole different energy of just like, you are in this one is a much more of like an action state that I would say than the next one. The pink moon is one of the ones that is like, you're in a you're moving, you got a lot going on. Purple, if you're in a purple moon, right, which is where I'm at right now. So this is after a full moon. I usually am bleeding right before a new moon right now. So point is that your life is more peaceful and quiet. This is a time to rest. You're going through that metamorphosis of inner wisdom. These are more of our wild women, our alchemists, and they're saying goodbye to the old and hello to the new. So they're not in the aggressive red moon cycle, because purple is more about the fact that you've already done a lot of that intense transitioning, and now you're more in that just slowing it down. Like you don't have to try so hard and release it, and you're alchemizing everything so that anything that happened, you're putting it in place for to be used for the best of all, really. But in yourself, why you don't have as much going on is because you are more doing that internal mulling over of things, versus a pink one. You know what you need to do, right? And you need to start taking that action. I've already started taking the action. So a lot of my releases right now are just about me needing to calm down. When it's my period, when that's happening, I'm not going, and I know it's time for me to relax. But even in my life right now, it's not so much about learning and retaining and getting all this stuff. It's about just being at flow and going with it, because I spent a lot of years through the turbulent. I was on a red moon cycle for a really long time. I was on a white moon cycle for a really long time too, right? So anyways, the point is that we naturally mimic these cycles. And so when we don't know that, we don't know how to honor our cycle that we're in, and we don't know how to honor even what our cycling at that time means. But the moon itself, when we are in through our menstruation, there are weeks that we're better to do stuff. A lot of the time, the hardest stuff that we should be doing is during our ovulation. And why that is because we feel the best during ovulation week. We have the most energy, our body's the most fittest, and its optimal conditioning is when it's in ovulation. So if you don't know that, then you're just going to try and push yourself to be doing all this stuff regardless of where you are in your schedule, which I understand. But you'll notice that it's hard to maintain because you don't work like that. You are not a robot. You have a different week. So for me, there's certain weeks that I like to specifically do certain things versus other weeks because I like to pay attention to where I am in my cycle and know what that cycle of that time is calling for me. Okay, and so that is one of the things that I found the most interesting when I started looking into it, because a lot of women, I don't think they have that kind of connection with their body. And the more you connect with the moon, you understand how she is very much like you, right? And so it's a very beautiful thing. And so one of the things that I wanted to move into next after looking into this, just the history of the moon and its importance. It's really easy for me to talk about how important it is and to say we've used it as a calendar, but not actually talking about, the people that really started it and where it came from. And I even have a history of animals and how it's important for some of them. So for the moon, and we began tracking the moon as the calendar of the sky 30,000 years ago. They found a bone in France that was 28,000 years old, and one of the things it had was pits arranged in different lunar cycles. And it suggested that even in the Ice Age, they use it to predict important nights for hunting. There are like the buck moon and stuff like that. Different phases of the year, that moon phase is good because of these animals or these happening, and they'll see the animals naturally migrating or transitioning and stuff like that. And so the seasons and the different moons became really important because sometimes that was going to be the only time they were going to see an animal until the next year, right? Like if you're going into the winter months. So it's pretty interesting because they use this all the way back then just for hunting. They're not even talking about for anything else. Just our hunters use this, okay? Cultures that acknowledge moon phases and incorporate it into life even now. Some of them might not do this now, but for the most part, I do believe if they are still in some of these religions, they do honor them because their ancestral lineage knew the importance of this, and it's still important to pay respect to it. So first is indigenous cultures. The Cree specifically, they follow the 13-moon calendar. East Asia, they have this mid-autumn festival to celebrate the full moon at that time. Islam, their calendar is lunar, only fully lunar. And they use that crescent moon to mark the sacred months like their Ramadan, when that starts for them. Hinduism, full moon day, Purnima, I think it's called. And that's when it's for fasting and prayers to Lord Vishnu. And they believed because of the moon had an effect on human, anatomy. So that's one of the reasons they prayed to him and fasted, is to help themselves to deal, which one of the best things you can do when the energy is intense is to fast. You download actually the information from the moon a lot quicker because your body's not processing food on top of the energetics information, okay? Because think about it, if your brain is eating, if your spirit is eating, and your body's eating, that's double the digestion. So sometimes the best thing you can do if you are dealing with a lot in life, emotionally, mentally, and you already eat healthily. I don't want to say if you're already not eating to fast, but if you already do eat regularly and you just have a lot going on, try fasting for a little bit. It really does help move things quite quickly in your brain and in your energy. Ancient Egypt, they have a god, Khonsu, who govern passage of time and lunar cycles, and they're believed to influence fertility in human and animals. And so that, they don't necessarily, I wouldn't say they necessarily do it now, but in ancient Egypt, they honored how important those things were, right? Especially fertility. Fertility was especially important. Even their animals, because of food. So, and then of course, pagan and Wiccan. Modern and ancient, they do rituals during the full moon to cleanse energy, often using dancing and chanting. And so even with humans, that we can show that it's not just like a me thing, but in general, there's cross cultures that understand the importance of this. Okay, and then what about animals? So it's interesting because getting into this, I thought maybe I'd find something about wolves. I thought maybe I'd find something about elephants. Unfortunately, none of the above actually mattered in relative specs The only thing that matters in regards to the moon for that is that wolves, they might, due to the full moon, they actually are more likely to not maybe get their prey as much because of the fact that their prey can see them. Elephants during a full moon, because they are illuminated, they typically stand in circles to protect themselves. So it's not like you could maybe see things online that the moon, like the animals, like the elephant itself is like doing some kind of moon ritual or paying respect to the moon, but apparently no. However, when I was looking at it, it's funny because there are some animals that use it better for hunting, and some use it as a sign to migrate or reproduce, because it's like again, those moon cycles, right? Oh, it's time to leave. It's time to migrate. It's time to have babies, right? So I wanted to look into the most affected by this, and not surprisingly enough, the animals that are most profoundly affected are marine life. The ones in the water, what do you know? I would understand why. So one of the ones specifically is coral reefs. I found this super cool because I love coral. So they have a synchronized release of a mass releasing of eggs and sperm, and it's based on the moon's light and tides. So around usually the full moon, that illumination actually is like, oh, it's time for us to do it. So love that. Bristle worms in new moons, they have lunar neurons that tell them to go to the surface in a synchronized mating dance. It's even, what's neat is they wanted to see if this was true. Scientists took a bunch of these guys and put them in a completely dark room so that they could not predict like when a new moon was happening versus a full moon. And they still continued. Their cycle even without the moon, without the full moon's light at all. And the new moon, they don't know. But yet they still knew. They still knew when it was time to rise up and do their mating dance, even in the complete dark in a room. Crazy. There's this thing called grunion fish, and they use spring tides, like the new or full moon, to beach themselves and to lay eggs, which this happened on one of those episodes. I think it was like 90210. But anyways, yeah, those guys do it. Impalas. Males on a full moon are triggered to release a hormonal response, which is a really intense roar. And it's so intense that it makes the females ovulate. And they do this again as a synchronizing action for the entire herd to breed. Right? Cows are more likely to have spontaneous births during a full moon or a waxing gibbous. And that's just because I'm pretty sure the energy again. But then they have the nightjar birds. They synchronize their nesting cycles. So their chicks hatch specifically always on new moons. That way, in the few weeks when they're developing and need their highest food demand, on the full moon, it'll be the most illumination so that they can catch their food for their babies. And then the other one is like tropical forest mammals, just a big collection of them. Say 50% of the 86 species exhibit lunar phobia. This is them being scared to come out. They actively change the way they live during these full moon cycles because they know that there is they reduce all activity because they're prey and they can be seen, and so they don't do anything, right? And that's because they're scared. They know what the full moon means, and that's crazy to know that, I thought. Anyway, so as you can see, it's not just something like woo little bitty thing, like doesn't matter. Like the moon, it affects us, like even enough for the animals to care about it. And some of them, yeah, of course we're gonna understand that some of them are gonna do that, but to that degree, I did not. So I thought that was cool. Anyway, so now we're gonna move on to the moon phases. This is probably gonna be the bulk of what we're gonna talk about, and that's because this is gonna be not only the phases, but we're gonna talk about what each is good for. Okay, and I have a lot of information on these things because I did a lot of research when I started getting into magic and working with the moon. And so on all of these, this is my little breakdown that I made for myself. But anyway, so the first one we're going to start with is the new moon. And why I do this is because one of the things that I started to help me understand the cycles is I started looking at a plant life, right? And so in a new moon, it's pretty much you just have a seed. So that's the beginning. That's I'm going to start, because that's the beginning of the seed. And so if we were to give this phase an affirmation, it would be, I see my goals clearly and I feel joy as if it is already manifested. When you plant a seed of intentions, you already want to know what that seed's going to be. Like we plant a basil seed because it's basil, right? Like you know what it is. And so when you're planting these things with intention with the new moon, because new moon you're going to see is all about intentions. It's all about what do you want to create. If the womb is empty and you're going to put something in the womb to birth into the world, what is that going to be? And so you don't want to just be like, oh, maybe it'll come true. No, you want to believe that it's already there and to be grateful for that already happening. And then later on, that's why belief and trusting is really powerful, because you manifest a lot quicker when you already have the belief it's happening versus waiting for evidence, okay? So new moon is classified as a yang phase because you are needing to do something. You are needing to take action in planting your seeds or even knowing the direction you want to go. If we were to link this to a season, though, it would be a winter season. So even though it is yang, right, planting seeds does not necessarily mean that you're supposed to do all the work right now. In a new moon phase, it's more about just thinking about what it needs to be. And the action is about making tangible actions like writing it down or even just doing the thought processing to figure it out. A lot of these things aren't so much about you needing to take action sometimes. But depending on what zodiac that new moon is in, might change the energy of what kind of actions you might need to do, right? If you're somebody that was maybe born under a new moon, which is kind of important because it does, again, affect us. If you're born under a new moon, you might be creative, adventurous, and impulsive, okay? The energy of a new moon is new beginnings, new relationships, new adventures, new habits, positive changes, setting intentions, creating a goal list, rest, rejuvenation, introspection, and wish fulfillment. If we were going to look into activities that are best to do on a new moon, one of them would be cutting your hair, because cutting your hair especially is getting rid of energy. And so you're giving yourself a fresh, energetic cleanse pretty much by doing that. And you can also use the hair that you've cut off in your intentions. So if you write out a list and you want to keep it, you can put your hair in there. If you want to release your list and get rid of it and burn it, you can burn your hair with it. All that does is adds a personal touch of you declaring that this new phase is beginning, and adding something personal to you amplifies that. But that is magical working. So if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But I'm saying that even if you don't believe in magical workings, the power of cutting your hair off and burning it with a list of papers in itself, you should know the power that has just in its own. That's what I'm teaching people. Is not so much that you need to be a witch or a wizard or something like that. It's about knowing that there's power behind these things regardless. Writing a list has power because you're writing a tangible thing out and you're making it real in the physical. Burning it is a way to ignite it and to be like, this is happening now. Adding a personal touch into it is bringing yourself into that paper more. It's just amplifying it. You can have the power without putting your hair in it. You can have the power without burning it. I'm just saying all those different levels add to another degree to how powerful that could be, right? Anyway, you could journal your intentions, have a bath, make moon water. You could go out and swim naked, be open-minded, lead by example, manifest, visualize, unplug, disconnect. Doing yoga, a really good pose for this, if you are going to do yoga, is a flow one. And then you could do tarot if you want. You could do any kind of rituals, which sometimes what I just talked about writing a list, cutting your hair and burning it, that would be classified as a ritual. Rituals do not have to be scary. Rituals are just different steps you take for a certain outcome. So they don't have to be something that is bad or thought of it in a terrible way. Even me making my morning drink is a ritual. Even the way I greet the day is a ritual for me, right? So you can make an offering. Sometimes if you really want to call stuff into your life, the best thing that you can do is give something away. And it's like reciprocity, right? So you're giving something away because you know you're going to get something. So, and start new things. This is a good time that if you are wanting to maybe look into a new hobby or look into a new skill, just start just looking at it and finding a way to make a goal plan to do more of it. The next phase we're going to touch on is the waxing crescent. And so If this one had an affirmation, it would be, I create a plan of action to draw my goals to me. See how it is now slowly, when the moon is moving away from being just a new moon, which it can be in a new moon sometimes for just a day. Sometimes it could be in a zero energy or under, I think, like 2 or 5%, and it's still classified as a new moon. Because the fuller it is, so 100% is a full moon. So the closer to zero it is, the more it's a new moon, okay? If you have a moon app, you can see it. That's what I have, so I track continuously what zodiac of each day is, and that helps me. But anyway, you can see here now, see how the new moon was just thinking about it, and now this is about, I create a plan. This is about the tangible steps. So we get hard on ourselves being like, we have to do it all right now, but it does take time. There are these phases you naturally go through to make things happen. So this is a yin. And that's why it's a yin cycle, because you're technically not doing anything besides just creating a plan again. You're not taking these steps still, even in a waxing crescent. The season that this one would be most like is either like Imbolc, which is like close to spring. That's like one of our first spring things. But you could also relate it a little bit to winter, because you're still in the winter. You're still trying to like put it together rather than take action. If somebody's born under waxing crescent, it means you're ambitious, productive, and adverse to risks. So you don't really care too much about risks. But the energy of it is creativity, refinement, communication, action, a plan of attack, success, intentions, hope, faith, friendship, open to inspiration, organization, time to dream, fertility, thinking positive, and gathering resources. Activities outside of those ones, because those in themselves you can use on activities, but affirmations, wishes, journaling, list making, visioning, and friendship. I do have a list here that if you were into magic, I have a list of what is best to do on those things. So like on our new moon, a lot of the time, like cord cutting, cleansing, purifying the body, protection, inner harmony, peace, divination, soul searching. In a waxing crescent, it would be constructive magic, attraction, success, good health, positive magic. Areas that you want to increase, you would do any kind of spell work that you want to increase something in. First quarter, this is going to be a yang one, and this is most related to a season, is going to be the spring equinox. So first quarter, big booming happened, right? A spring equinox, everything's blossoming all at once, little things, right? So for an affirmation, I move towards my goals with courage and creativity. If you're born under this, you're capable, you're action-oriented, and you're impatient. First quarter, now that you have been waiting, right, in the winter phase, now you are in your spring, and everything's ready to come up and go. And so in a first quarter, if you were to be mimicking these in your life and using the moon to want to go forward, around the first quarter, that should be a day that you're like, let's take charge on something, you know? Anyways, so moving along. So the energy of this is, it's time to take action steps, determination, commitment, moving forward, strength, concentration, decision-making, motivation, creativity, formulating new goals, and exploring potential. Activities would be putting words into action. So anything that you say you're going to do, it's now time to do. Determination, the hard work, being brave, and concentration. So these are when you want to make those steps that maybe look a little bit more difficult, make them real. Spells for this one, positivity, money, growth, strength, motivation, action, anything like that. If you're having trouble moving forward, this could be a really good time for like a road opening spell, because technically you want to blast them open so you can take action. The next is we're going to get the waxing gibbous, okay? And so this is again a yin, so you're going to see it goes yin, yang, okay? And so waxing gibbous, that's why a lot of people don't talk about the phases outside of the new moon, full moon, or first or last quarter. Those are yang states, right? So these other ones, they're important though. The yin states matter, okay? So waxing gibbous, I trust all my power is perfectly aligned with the universe. It is most related to Beltane. Beltane is the energy I'm in right now. That is what today is, May 1st. Beltane is a very amazing rebirth into active energy, but you're still, at this point, we are more growing and moving forward versus like taking hardcore action. We just took action, right? So Beltane, you already took action. You're kind of like assessing what action you need to take now that you've already taken some. But anyways, if you're born under this, calming, nurturing, and perfectionist, the energy of it is growth, healing, empowerment, learning, creativity, transformation, making revolutions, cultivation of intentions, preparing for manifestations, adjusting, refining, health, friendship, motivation, seeking love or trust, and receiving. Activities, nurturing seeds. So anything you planted in the new moon, going back and seeing what maybe needs a little bit more tweaking or help. Supporting your creations. Oh, this again, going back to the first quarter, if you took all those actions, how can you continuously maintain those actions? How can you keep it up? How can you balance it? How can you stay with it, right? Preparing for manifestations. At this stage, since you've already put work in, you might already be seeing results. And sometimes you might need to prepare yourself for the results you get, because part of welcoming your manifestation is feeling safe. If you have a really great outcome, right? And sometimes, like, think of it as a compliment. Some people push those away, right? And you're kind of like pushing away your blessing. And that's the same for manifestations. If you don't prepare, sometimes you might think you're not deserving or unworthy of it, and that might make you push it away versus being like, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I asked for. But anyways, okay. And so preparing for manifestations, commitment, because you want to keep up the progress now, and listening to messages, because maybe you're getting clues that maybe you need to go in a different direction at this point, because you've already been taking action now. So maybe there's a few little tweaks you can make, but anything. There could be different insights coming up that now that you've done this, now maybe a new step of your purpose or progress or journey is now going to be revealed to you, and you need to listen to how to add that in. Continued action towards goals and positive thinking. If you were going to do spells with this one, you could do like career, money, motivation, good health, attraction, success, new love, any areas of increase that you want. So beauty, renewal, or nurturing. And then we get to the full moon. Full moon is obviously yang. It's I trust now is my time and I am unstoppable is its affirmation. Its season is most related to is the summer solstice. Think about what's happening middle of summer. Very intense energy, very alive, very fiery, and lots is blooming, lots is still growing. So that's why when a full moon hits, it is so intense all of a sudden, right? Because it has so much energy in it. So, and the energy of it is time to shine, harvesting, gratitude, amplifying, charging up. The activities you could do would be like give thanks, celebrate, shine, get rid of things, rituals, make your moon water, because you can make moon water for new. You can make moon water in any phase that you want. I typically stick with new and full moon, and I usually have a little bit of both on hand at all times. I don't make it for all moon phases like this Scorpio one. Not making it. One of the reasons I purposely don't really like Scorpio transits. And that's not because I don't. It's because I don't need to amplify that in my life. I have a lot of death and rebirths and transformations happening. I don't need it in water formation for me personally. So other people who maybe have a little bit of hard time struggling with some of the energy in a Scorpio, making moon water in the full moon or a new moon might be beneficial to help you welcome that into your life for those energies that are amplified in that moon phase, but not for me, this one anyway. So, after the make the moon water, be wild and free, listen to your instincts, push forward, transformation, love unconditionally, sign and seal your intentions. This is where you're declaring they're completely done. That's why you could burn some of them at this point, because you're like, I don't need it. I don't need to read it anymore. I can just, it's good. It's going to happen, so I can let it go. Illumination, allow yourself to kind of like, the moon shines its light the brightest at that time, so things are going to be revealed usually during a new moon, or full moon. So let whatever is being illuminated help you, because as you move forward, you can take that knowledge to make your seeds or your goals stronger, right? Spell work is obviously really good, because that's why a lot of people use the full moon, is because it is so intense. Charge your crystals, wishes will come true at that time, so it's a good time for making wishes as well. Protection, moon gazing, burn bowls. Burn bowls are my favorite. Detox baths and meditate and journal. So usually on a full moon, it is a time of purging. For me anyways, a full moon is a time to really release. So that if I'm going to really want to maybe start a new fresh chapter and I've been having a real hard time, the best thing that I could tell you to do is write a release list, which I've written one for this full moon. What you want to do is you want to write it out, and this is anything that's going on for you that you do not want carrying forward. But the thing about it is you don't want to be like, bye, you don't matter. You want to write these things out with a gratitude, because thank you for showing up in my life. Thank you for coming around and giving me these messages. And thank you so much for leaving now, because you taught me so well that I actually don't need you to come forward with me. So, confirmation, burps. But like, thank you for helping illuminate what I no longer need to carry forward, and for making me stronger so that I can be lighter, and by letting you go, now make space for the things I do want, that I am ready for, that I am in alignment for. So another thing you can do, instead of just writing a release list, is you can also write what you're going to invite in. Because what happens when we clear a space, so say you cleanse your space with any kind of smoke or sound, if you just do a cleansing, that's only part of it. You want to then charge the energy up with what you want in that space. So I don't just clear this place out of bad stuff. I then go around and charge it up with good smells that I really like and good energy that I wanted here. And that's the same when sometimes, not always, when I'm releasing the Scorpio one, for me, it's about, because of the Beltane right now, right? This is how things can matter. Is because it has this new season, and it's like a rebirth season, especially because of the Scorpio aspect. It is a time of being like, goodbye old me, hello new me. So you want a list of, this is what's closing out and this is what's starting. Because sometimes you want to have both. For a long time, I always did both. I always did two lists. It was always like, what am I getting rid of? Because it was really easy to write the next list. Pretty much whatever you have on one list, it'll be the opposite on the others. So I used to use my list to help me write both of them. And sometimes by doing that, it helps you to focus. You don't want to just focus on what you want to say goodbye to, right? That's where a lot of us get stuck, is just being like, I don't want this, goodbye. No, I don't like this, goodbye. The thing is that in order to manifest, you do not want to think about what you don't want. You want to focus on what you do. Releasing these things is nice because you're like, yeah, goodbye to that. But you also want to be like, what am I going to bring in instead? And that really helps you to really get the brain thinking about what the direction you actually want to go in, right? So, anyways, I will be burning these. I will be burning these both tonight. And usually, then what I do is, on a full moon, I do a burn bowl, I cleanse my home, and I have a bath. And I usually have a bath with salt water. And why that is because, for one, I'm preparing myself. So you prepare your vessel. I usually have a bath first. Okay, and that's because then I cleanse my aura, well, my physical body. Then I cleanse my home, or sometimes I do it the other way. Cleanse my home and then go have a bath. Either way, I'm not just cleansing then my physical body, I'm also cleansing my auric field as well. And then I'm cleansing my environment, so then nothing's in here either. On top of when I get out of a shower or a bath, I'm now clean. You can do a shower. I don't want to say you can't, because you can go in there and be like, I am now cleansed. I now wash away anything that's not mine. You can do that. I use salt because I'm highly energetic and highly emotionally like a sponge, right? And so for me, to cleanse me fully, I love salt. It really helps me decompress really quick. So anyway, those are just the things that I do. And then to amplify it, sometimes what I take is my ashes from my burn bowl and I'll go bury them. Sometimes you can go throw them out in water. You know, if it's something really bad, like say it's people you're getting rid of and they're really toxic, burn it and then flush it down the toilet. Because you're like, goodbye bullshit, you know, goodbye shit, you know, like it's like how you discard of these papers, what you do with them when you write on them, very important. Like some of them I keep, some of them are manifestations that I want brewing for a long time. And then eventually I'll go through a phase where I go and burn all of those manifestations because I'm like, I'm not the same person anymore, so I don't need to hold on to this paper anymore, right? And so, anyway, full moon, there's a lot of few things that you can do, but you don't have to do any of them. You can do whatever you feel called to. For me, because they are so potent, I do like to use them, but there are some moon phases that I don't do anything for. I don't feel called to, right? Then there are some that are so major and powerful that it's not that I force myself, it's that I'm like, it actually is weird that you don't want to do something for this one. And so it maybe feels a bit more like negative forces are at play trying to discourage me from utilizing this energy because it will be for the good of all. And they don't really want that, these nefarious things, right? There are, at all times, we do have things like that. And so that's why it's important sometimes for us to know that not always you have to do these things. Sometimes you won't feel called, but there is a difference between feeling like something is thwarting you from it, right? And sometimes I feel so bogged down and drained until I do these things. And then I realized that it was because I had to do that releasing. I had to do these steps, and I felt bogged down because that energy was impacting me so intensely. But anyways, moving along. So spells for this one. Actually, yeah, meditate and journal were the last ones after detox bath. So spells: love, banishing, charging, clearing, healing, clarity, personal growth, psychic abilities, developing skills, intuitive awareness, building desire, or desire building. So full moon you can use for a lot of different reasons. There's a very variety of different ways. If you are interested in starting to do any kind of new moon or full moons, there are people that write up rituals online specifically. Different ingredients, different words, different steps, different things, different ideas. Sometimes they'll give you a variety of ideas to do for a specific moon phase with that zodiac. The whole point is that you don't have to do every single one. You don't have to do everything I'm listing. These lists are for you to pick and choose what ones align with you. What ones are you maybe naturally already gravitating towards? If you start tracking your emotions and how you feel about the moon in different phases, you might realize that you're naturally already like going towards some of these things. Like sometimes, especially around big ones, full moons especially, I'm like, I really need to be in nature. I will try to be in nature as much as I possibly can around those because they are helping me ground through all of that energy I'm feeling, right? And so these things are just like a list for you to start getting your brain working on. And even when people provide you those lists, don't think that you have to do everything that they say or whatever. Follow your own intuition, especially with moon work. Intuition is a huge aspect because the way the moon is communicating to you might be slightly different than others, and that's because we're all unique, just like the moon phases are, right? So and because of your birth chart, it could be affecting you in a different way, so you might more need one thing versus all of these other things. All right, moving along. Waning gibbous. So this is a yin state again. If we were going to relate this to anything, this is Lammas. Lammas is more after the spring equinox. This is in between like fall-y kind of area. And so this is I've celebrate all I have accomplished. All right. Oh, I don't think I said if you're born under this one. So if you're born under a full moon, it makes you emotional, sensitive, and conflicted. Just so people know. That's probably why I avoided saying that one. If you're born under this one, it makes you pensive, analytical, and critical. And that's because after a full moon, a lot of the time we're doing a lot of the tweaking and revamping, right? So the energy of a waning gibbous is receiving, contemplation, completing, discipline, tying up loose ends, releasing what does not serve, ripening, satisfaction, and absorbing revelations. Activities, this is banish negativity. You can do a lot of baths, music, visualizations of what you don't want disappearing. The whole point is to think about it like literally being sucked into a void and gone from your life, not to just think about what you don't like. This is a good time for teaching or opening up, utilizing your wisdom, and celebrating your abundance. The last quarter is every day I get wiser and make positive changes in my life. This is, again, a yang one. And it's most related to the autumn equinox. So at this point, you're mid-deep in autumn. And if you're born under this one, you're loyal, sentimental, and attached. And that's because at that point, we're not ready to give up all, right? In the autumn equinox, we're doing some of our harvesting, right? And so it's hard. Like for me, the hardest time for gardening is when I have to call it quits. When I have to be like, when is it time to pull all my growth out? When is it time to like return my garden to just soil, right? And so it is really hard sometimes to let go of that and to acknowledge that the growing season is over. So the energy is grace, going with the flow, transformation, breaking habits, releasing, Breathing, adjusting, elevating, letting accomplishments emerge. Activities is emergence as your new self, because now you've been reborn, right? You're moving on. And again, we only have one more phase and then we're in the new moon again. So at this point, you're a fully developed kind of plant and you're maybe starting your decay process. And in becoming like dying out, like trees, right? Even though they're dying, when the winter comes, their roots and their branches, everything's getting stronger and bigger, so that the next year they're going to have a bigger cropping. So their new self is going to be changed because it will be that bigger, expanded version now, right? So anyway, releasing, breathing, adjusting, elevating, letting accomplishments emerge, your old self emerge, let's say activities, emergence is a new self, letting go of the old, receiving communication, forgiving and breaking free. Spells could be breaking bad habits, bad spells, anything that you want to get rid of bad juju for. This is also like when you do hexes, curses, this is for toxic bonds, banishing, relinquishing, reducing debt and illness. I don't do a lot of those spell works, by the way. So, but the only kind of negative thing that I do with spell work is literally return to senders or cord cuttings. I do not do anything to do with hexes and stuff like that. Not somebody that would ever suggest that you should. I'm a very big believer on free will, and I'm a very big believer on karma. And so I believe that the people who don't use these things and negatively, it's the best. And some people, that's why a lot of practitioners won't even hex somebody or curse somebody for you, is because the blowback that happens if it doesn't work is way worse for that person that's practicing that did that. And so I highly recommend not doing that stuff. But if you needed to break away from somebody, if you had somebody really terrible in your life, the best time is your last quarter. Because like first quarter is taking action towards something you like, right? Last quarter is like, it is time to sever those ties. Bye. Whatever is not coming with me into my new, they gotta go. So the last phase we have is the waning crescent. This goes into like the balsamic moon phase, which is where it's the dark phase of the moon, which technically the new moon is classified as well. But as she's depleting, she's going to zero, right? Versus the opposite, in the waning crescent, she's starting to build up from zero. She is starting to downgrade now to zero. This is the season that this relates to is Samhain, which Samhain is literally what happens in October 31st. And so I let go of my past and understand my mistakes to help me grow. This is literally deading pretty much everything, right? And so if you're born under this, you're imaginative, unconventional, maybe isolated. The energy is reflection, contemplation, creating new intentions, and surrendering. We have to give up our old self for the new. And a lot of this time, this is where we have to face a lot of our shadows or our work to really admit where we are versus where we want to go and how we are the creator in that, right? And so the activities: decluttered, deep conversations, bath, music, cooking, seeing friends, rest, relaxation, reflection, final purge, inner working, preparing to plant seeds, time for rest, final release, solidifying transformation, integration, and surrender. For me, sometimes when I first began the waning crescent, sometimes this would be where I would recognize what I don't want coming forward with me in my new moon. So I would write my release list. I would say this is not coming forward with me. And then that would help me know what I do want to plant for the new moon, which is going to come up in a few days from the waning crescent, right? So what's interesting is even doing this, you can kind of see how throughout the month, you're going to change. Like naturally, men maybe aren't on the exact same cycle as women for that. But no matter what, the moon is influencing you. And the moon does have that power in it, right? And so at some point, even though it's slightly different for you, you're still being impacted. And this is a way for you to see how maybe throughout the month, maybe at some points you are a bit more reflective. You are a bit more, I need to take charge today. You are a bit more like, fuck that person and I don't want them in my life, and there's a reason that's coming up is because you genuinely mean that. So spells, if you were in the waning crescent, would be like balance and success, reduce illness or debt, atonement, bad habits, baneful magic, and attaining wisdom. So lots of stuff you can do with the moon phases. As you can see, big list for each one. Amazing. It's really potent and powerful, and that's one of the reasons that I really love working with the moon and understanding it, because at all points in our life, the moon is always going through these phases, whether we care about her or not. And so these moon phases, regardless of zodiacs that they're in, because the zodiac amplifies that energy of each one of those phases, right? So an earth new moon or an earth first quarter is going to be different than a fire new moon or a fire first quarter, right? Like you're going to have different energies that are amplifying what is best to focus on. So that's where we're going to move in right now, is the moon cycle plus the zodiacs. So I'd say the most detail, like, I wouldn't say you have to get too bogged down in understanding the zodiacs. Again, there are people online that will help give you a really accurate breakdown, because they're going to use a lot more than just what I'm talking about in this video to fully understand, because they take the entire sky into consideration, and they also take the transits placement, like actual numbering as well, right? And I'm not going to go over that today. But I'd say the most important detail is just for you to know what group it fits in, right? Like an earth versus a fire. Yeah, knowing more about like a Capricorn versus a Virgo will help you that much more. So I do have a few words to help you understand if you want a quick difference between them. But the main thing that I would harp on is just knowing the difference between a fire grouping versus an air or a water or any of them, right? Because then if you know kind of the difference between those groups, you can understand just the energy that much better versus and then the next level, of course, is to pinpoint it in the zodiacs of that grouping. Okay, so all right, so we're first going to start with the different element groups, and in each group I'm going to tell you a few words for each one of the zodiacs. So an earth moon, these ones are going to be more grounded, pragmatic feels, builder energy, getting things done and clean up, organize, and being realistic. When an earth moon comes up, that's a lot of the time when you're like, I need to clean my house. I need to get rid of this stuff. I need to finish up these tasks. Why that is because earth is very much being like, it's being more tangible in this realm that we're in. It's our technical element we exist in, right? And so Taurus, we have a Taurus moon in any of the phases, what that's more meaning is leaning into more your sensual side, your steadiness. Maybe this also is going to illuminate some of the things you have to be worried about. So in a Taurus one, stubbornness, indulgentness. Indulging is good to a certain degree because with sensuality, you deserve to indulge and to feel good. But then again, there's another level, right? Moderation's key. If you indulge too much, right, you might hurt yourself. You might be spending too much. You might be eating too much. You might be giving too much to friends or being too sensual and avoiding all of your responsibilities. So knowing just these four little words here helps you just understand kind of the energy of what that Taurus is about. Taurus is really about feeling good, but also about being stable. Taurus is a bull, right? So steady means that they're steadily making progress forward as well. And one of the reasons that they are stubborn is because they cannot be taken off their mission when they find it. But that's the thing, is you want to make sure that's the right mission, because you don't want to be stubborn and persevering on some kind of trail that you don't need to be going on, right? And so it is a time to look at those things to make sure they align. But Virgo, being analytical, helpful, precise, modest. Virgo is about the crossing the T's and dotting the I's, man. My dad was a Virgo. It is about the details, okay? And so this one is going to be the one that is going to help you progress the most if you need to get stuff done. Like, it is a no fuck around kind of energy. Capricorn is ambitious, discipline, reserved, and seriousness. So Capricorn is also going to be one of those ones that is also not really playing around. It wants you to get stuff done. It is going to be more disciplined in the fact of knowing like maybe what routes you need to go and how you set up. That's what the ambition is, kind of like the pre-planning and thinking it out, right? So then if we go into an air moons, any of the phases that they would be in, they are more about intellectualness, socialness, connection, energy, connection, like connective energy with others, talking, reading, analyzing feelings. It's light and breezy kind of feels, objective. Your mind may race with ideas. You might also feel a little bit more floaty is the way that I would say it, because sometimes I don't have air in my chart really as much. So when I have an air moon kick up, I can feel it very intensely in the way of just feeling like my mind is scattered, right? So one of the things to do if your mind feels too scattered is just to go and be in nature. You can even put rocks in your pocket because they weight you down and keep you grounded on earth. But anyway, here we're going to look into Gemini. So Gemini is chatty, versatile, restless, and witty. Libra, harmonious, balanced, diplomatic, aesthetic. So sometimes with Libra, because it is about balance, you do have to make a choice. And some of the things, if you are too airy in the head, you might not know what choice you have to make then, right? But most of the time, you're going to be harmonious and balanced. It's going to be trying to lead you in a path that's going to help you be able to maintain things a bit more easily. And so the themes that might be coming out might challenge you in those ways, but it also might help motivate you to get clear in those ways. Aquarius, innovative, detached, rebellious, and visionary. A fire. Fire moons are my favorite because my sun sign is Sagittarius. And so fire is pretty much high octane restlessness, action, energy, urges us to start, move the body, confront problems, warm, impulsive, extroverted, less patience, more confidence. So Aries, you're going to have independence, bold, impatience, raw, clean starts. Leo, expressive, playful, dramatic, loyal. Sagittarius, adventurous, optimistic, blunt, and expansive. So you can really see how these kind of, even though they relate all to those grouplings that I'm talking about, like you can still get the energy of what the moon is. Knowing the specifics helps you just that much more understand how that element is impacting that moon, right? And so a water moon, intuitive, absorbent, feeling energy, emotions run high, sensitivity, nostalgia, protective, moody, vulnerable, vivid dreams, and others' energy can be that much more powerful to you because of the fact that you're more openly receptive to it and they are that much more openly vulnerable to displaying it. So that's why this moon, I had already had, I think it was like Wednesday, I had a huge crying fest and my man was like, it's a Sagittarius moon. I'm like, oh, that makes sense why it's all so intense to me right now, which Sagittarius, the moon is transitioning to Sagittarius tomorrow. But the full moon hits its peak in Scorpio, which is why it is classified as a Scorpio full moon. And Scorpio full moon is today, and that's a water one. And because I do have water in my rising, I do cry a lot around water moons. And so if it's a Cancer one, nurturing, protective, sentimental, intuitive. Scorpio, intense, private, transformative, magnetic. A lot of Scorpio energy is sexuality and attraction, and so that's why it can also be magnetic on top of just the emotional. But anyways, Pisces, dreamy, empathetic, artistic, mystical, and going with the flow. So these grouplings, they hardly justify the full realm of each of these signs, right? But it is a good little snippet for you to understand just a little bit of them, okay? Okay, so ways that we can use moon cycles in our life now. So this is about applying what we've just learned, okay? So in daily, you can check where the moon is in its cycle. So this is like pretty much understanding where along those phases it falls. If it's waxing, so the new moon to a full moon, this is when it's growing, right? It's building up from that 0 to that 100 state. So this is your inhaling. This is what you want to suck into your life. This is what you want to breathe into your life, okay? So ways you can add to your life, new habits, learn, buy stuff, or begin your projects. If it's in a waning, so if it's in this shrinking phase, going from the 100 to the 0 now, full to new, this is what they classify as exhaling, right? So what do you want to blow out of you? What do you want to blow away from you? Use these days for moving, deep cleaning, breaking bad habits, ending toxic cycles, exfoliating your skin, getting rid of the dead life, right? So you can then use it monthly as well. This is like new moon. This is where we use it on the monthly, going through all of the phases all the time, paying attention where the moon is, and then using it. So you could start with the new moon. You set your goal, write 3 to 5 intentions for the month. You're planting those seeds. First quarter, you take action towards those seeds, so tackle your hardest task at that time. Full moon, release and celebrate, see all you've accomplished and the ways that maybe you want to change a little bit of a pivot, or if you like the way you're going, how to keep up with it. Last quarter, reflection. See what didn't work. Maybe everything worked. You don't have anything to reflect on, right? And then again, you start again. So now after that reflection, right? Well, if these things are going good, your goal can just be simply staying consistent with it. Or you can set completely new ones if you feel like you've already tackled them, right? Seasonal, you can use them for the seasons to plant your garden, like with the new moons. New moons are good to plant seeds on, literally, like in the physical, because of the fact that the energy is for planting intentions. And so you can use it to plant your gardens. Seasonally, you can cut your hair with waxing moons for it to grow back quicker. So people also sometimes don't cut their hair except for on the Sabbath, which that's more to do with the wheel of the year, but there's different ways that you can apply this. So financial planning, so doing new accounts or investments on new moons versus full moon, you want to harvest your profits or pay off your debts. And then you can do self-care by elements. This is more of, again, a daily one, and this is about when you go through, like, using that moon sign that I see, like moon app that I have, you can see that the sign each day, what the moon is in, its phase, and also what zodiac is attached to it. And then depending on what that is, you can then use that to choose what you're going to do that day. So if it's a fire day, it doesn't matter where the moon is in its phase. If it's a fire day zodiac, right? Those are good for high intensity workouts, social outings, brave conversations. And then depending on where the moon is in the phase, you can apply that even more so, right? Because maybe you want to create goals with that, or maybe you've already been doing these things and you are going to notice how good you've been doing at them. Earth days, if it's just a regular Earth day in the zodiac with the moon, depending on where it is, maybe it's time for just meal prepping, gardening, budgeting, barefoot walks. Air days could be journaling, reading, catching up with friends, and brainstorming. Water days could be baths or just being by the water, swimming, meditation, lots of sleep. So you can do a lot of stuff with them depending on how you want. But the reason why it's important to know is because it's just there's so many different ways that they can impact you energetically, but also can influence you. If you're somebody that's like, don't really know where to go and don't really know how to start kind of maybe making a routine or habits in your life, some of the things that I learned that were the most important for me for habits and things that I needed were by simply trying these steps, right? I didn't know how important it was for me to have nature in a lot of my days until I started realizing how much I needed nature in a lot of my days. But also water therapy is like something that is incredibly powerful to me regardless of the days I'm on, because even with fire, if it's a high fire day, water is its ammunition. Well, not ammunition, it's its antidote. So if you're feeling especially triggered and you know it's a fire day, maybe you need the opposite of that, right? And sometimes it's just about knowing what's happening and how your energy is coming up for you to know what kind of skills or tools or activities that you need for you at that time. All right, and so now we're going to move on to the importance of specific phases. So these are unique or intense energy times, which we talked a little bit about them, like how having several planets in Aries for that stellium was like a really big thing. So usually the full moon and the new moon are considered your most significant out of all the phases. And that's because they have like a big energy point, right? Like the energy is not midway, it's 0 or 100. Those are very, I want to say like complete numbers, right? And so they're in a full state, which makes the energy more potent than when they're moving through transitions that are only partial states. So the next level to that is then when we have eclipses. We can have a solar or a lunar eclipse. These are even more important forms of new and full moons because eclipses bring about intense changes, because now you're using the sun to magnify what is happening with the moon, right? And so these allow for massive transformations. They're known as cosmic resets. So for a lunar one, it's uncovering which is hidden because, the sun is gone behind the moon. And so it is shining through to illuminate something. And the moon is often working in that hidden unconscious, subconscious, right? So something's being brought to light that normally is not seen. Okay, and so we're releasing what doesn't serve, increasing our intuitive awareness, divination, and wisdom. Solar, this is blocking out the moon, isn't it? Right? So when we have new beginnings of all types, we're taking initiative, new jobs, new ideas, positive energy, change, luck, growth, abundance. What's happening is a lot of the stuff that we maybe don't see needs to be brought to light is now being brought to light because the sun is now stepping forward to be like, this is what's important. So there are also other important important alignments other than the eclipses. We can have other cosmic events where several planets can be in alignment, right? And so stelliums matters, it's concentrated blast of energy, and it can mean there's a focused theme happening. It can be more karmically charged, especially if some of the slower planets are also in it, because slow planets take a long time to get into certain zodiacs, right? And so when they finally align, if they're finally aligning with other ones, they took a long time to get there. And so what that means is the changes that are happening for you, they're not going to be just in a month or a little bit. Some of these changes then, if a slow planet's involved in the transits, right? This is why it matters. It means that these could be, this change, whatever you work on now or whatever you don't work on, and you're just blindly manifesting, because if we're not paying attention, we are blindly manifesting. That's why it's important to know how these things impact us, because whether you work with the moon or not, the moon is working with you, all right? And why we want to be aware of it, it's the same with all of the other things I've talked about. Whether you know about it or not, it's still working and in fact impacting your life, okay? And so the whole point is, if these are involved, these can be something that maybe you'll be dealing with for years after that, okay? And so it's also one of the reasons why, if you know what's happening, you can use it the most conducively, because now you're guiding what direction that's going to be for the next few years, versus being like, I guess I'll just take whatever comes, right? And a lot of the time, automatic programming, by being like, I'll just take whatever comes, you are saying that it's okay for the story to continue the way that it has been, because that's the only story that has been written. If you do not write a new story, your brain, your nervous system, it will revert to the system, the programming that it knows. What we're doing is trying to actively program. That's why we use the moon. That's why we use all these different tools. It's to actively program our life and our direction for us, because we have that ability. That's why the cosmos is here and the divine works with us, is because it wants us to lead our life. All right. If you are at the seat of the whim, which you still want to direct your life by, and still be open to going with the flow, because you can't predict it all, and you want life to unravel for you, but you still don't want it to unravel in a way that suits you at no good. Like, if my life had continued the way that it was in the past and I let it unravel, it might have unraveled me into being like a drug addict or somebody that never went to school, because that was the programming for me at that time, was just booze, sex, and getting lost in something instead of tapping into my emotions, right? Nowadays, if I just let it continue before I was doing this, right, I would just continue enjoying my sessions and living my life, right? And so there's this level of comfortability we get in, that life will stay in that comfortability, even if it's not something we like, just because it's what's familiar. And so at some point, it's important to use these transits, because some of them we will never see again. Some of these lineups, some of these powerful portals that are specifically created for us to utilize, if we actually were being not programmed, but if we were actually being made aware of the power of these portals, we would be using them. We would be taught to use them. We wouldn't be scolded and them made to feel crazy. If anything, they would be something that we're all very aware of, because of the fact that we know their importance. The fact that we don't know, and yet when you look at some of the major events that have happened across time, they do know. And they plan these things on these energetic portals, because they get the boost from it and we don't, right? And so some of these things are very important, because like I said, they will last for a very long time in your life, and whether you know it or not, you've co-signed it by saying it's okay. And so sometimes I'm okay with going with the flow, because of the fact that the transition happening at the time, I already know where I'm at and where I'm going to go, and that's okay for it to continue. And then there are certain ones where I'm like, you know what? It's time. It's time for me to say what's happening now, what I'm ready to move forward with, and what I'm not ready to co-sign on anymore, right? So, again, just now, taking this in consideration, you can even just see what you might be building in the future, right? And so, big time, it's a major collective closure or opening when some of these transits happen, and sometimes just knowing about it and being aware of how you're navigating, feeling, or moving through it at the time is enough for you to respect the energy and to use it conducively, because sometimes some of these things are manifesting days in the ways that just your candor of the day is what's going to manifest what's going to happen. You don't actively have to do anything. It's more just the mentality and the emotionality, whatever phase that you're operating in and how you move throughout it. That's going to be the most. Like, stop manifesting so hard is because I didn't want to micromanage the universe, but I also wanted to live it. Sometimes we get so hard bent or focused on writing it out that we forget that we actually just need to take the action. And so I wanted to be living in my manifestation. So sometimes, especially on these high energetic days, it wasn't so much about manifesting with them and trying to dictate. It was about being like, oh, I'm going to show up as that new version. I'm going to show up as what I want that to be, because then I'm utilizing this by not just talking. I'm utilizing it through my entire being. I'm living it. It's already true, right? And so some of these things, it's just important to know so that you can act in your best insights, put your best foot forward. If you know it's an emotionally charging, aggressive moon that is going to make people more agitated, or it's a phase that's going to bring up these intense, frustrating, or heightened, like maybe emotions that make you very sad or very angry, it's a lot easier to be like, oh, I'm being pulled into this energy right now, and this is how I can utilize it versus getting swept away by it, right? And so some of these, the whole point of it is just to illuminate. Just even being aware of it is sometimes enough. You don't have to do all this extra stuff. But the awareness and acting in harmony with that can be really beneficial for you in the long run, especially if you are trying to make some self-improvements in yourself, right? Because a lot of these moons, they are showing us themes. They are allowing things to be triggered or brought to light for us to grow, for us to get better. You are having these experiences come up for a reason. So the more that you're aware of the themes and being able to track them in your life and being able to step into them and above them, you're going to grow that much quicker, because then you're not only utilizing your inner power, you're utilizing all of the sources that are coming around you to help you as well, which the moon, because she rotates so quickly, she is constantly trying to help us evolve very fast compared to a lot of the other planets that might not be doing that, right? Even the sun, it takes all year for the sun to go through all of the zodiacs, right? But the moon can help us get through there daily. We can be going through a new zodiac sign. Some days they are too, right? Could be a Cancer and a Sagittarius day. So anyway, so how to connect with the moon deeper, right? This is one of our last sectors, and then it'll be all done. But so research this video, any other video, looking at any of these things, it opens up the connection, okay? And that's how you can immediately just connect deeper with the moon, or even what the moon is trying to illuminate for you. Find rituals you most naturally align with in each zodiac to influence you to use daily, or especially in moon cycles. So like cleaning is a ritual. Walking barefoot can be a ritual. Like when I say ritual, it doesn't mean like you have to go all of a sudden like church and think it's like this big like thing that you have to do. No, a ritual is just anything that connects you a little bit either deeper with something out there like the moon, or an element out there, or yourself, okay? And so cleaning is a way for me to help connect with my home and also my own energy, because largely how we connect our energy in our environment, it helps show what kind of where we're in mentally as well. So use the moon phases to plan your life or time, which we've went over. You can literally plan out what weeks you should be doing certain things, and or even daily what you should be using that day for, because it might be a fire day versus an earth day. You can make moon water, which we've talked about. Moon water, the ways that you can use it, endless. Literally, you can use it to water your plants. You can put it in your bath water. You can put it in, I use it sometimes in my like teas, or in my kettle, just in my kettle, for whatever I use my kettle for. You can put it, some people, I also have a spray bottle that's made up of moon water, and I spray it on my floors and on different things in here. And it has no scent in it or anything, but it is like a way to revamp the energy in my room, to add that moon's energy into here. So you can use it for a lot of stuff. People can use it in baking. You can use it in your healthcare. Like you can use it, even some people, one of the ways is you can put your affirmations under it and have a glass of water that sits out on the moon, and drink in that moon water. And that moon water is now not just filled with the moon's energy, but the activations that you put under it for intentions. All right, you can charge your crystals. You can do moon yoga sequences. There are certain yoga videos and whatnot that people can walk you through that are literally just steps that most honor the moon and its energy by taking different poses, all right? And then you can lunar journaling. This is where you journaling, this is where you track the moon versus you. And so like each day you kind of like go into how you feel and then maybe look back and see what you feel like during all of the moon phases. And you can kind of see how it affects you, right? Another thing you can do is you can create a space that just reminds you of the moon or the lunar energy in itself. This can be like a white area that's very relaxing. You can have a lot of candles or seashells, that kind of stuff. You could also go in and look at your own birth chart, discover your moon sign, and get to know its place in your life. And then you could create a chart for areas that kind of match and see anything that maybe you have in the same house as your moon and see how maybe it impacts you. My moon is in Capricorn. Most of my chart is in Capricorn. So originally when I was a kid, I thought I aligned most with the fire sign, right, as a Sagittarius, because that's the sun sign. That's what most people know. And so finding out that the majority of my chart is Capricorn made a lot of sense why nature is so revitalizing to me, and also why I usually need a lot of water in my life because I have to stay hydrated. But also, fire, in order for my fire to do the best, like fire eats earth, right? So one of the reasons why it's important to have a little bit of all is important. Like for my fire, I need a little air, but too much, right? Not really beneficial because my element is earth more. So I actually need more water than I do fire and air. But both are good for me. Fire burns stuff and creates new life, and air also helps spread out seeds and helps like destroy some stuff, but that also is like divine destruction and restructuring, because some seeds then they get spread throughout the wind that wouldn't happen if there wasn't that destruction of that, right? So point being, even just looking at your chart and figuring out where it is can help you understand even your own elemental breakup, but especially tapping into the moon sign will help you, because then even when there's moon phases, that could be how you need to apply it. Like for me, regardless of what moon phase it's in, because my overall moon phase for my birth chart is earth, I have to apply it in an earthly way, something that makes me feel good in the physical, tangible way of my earth sign. And then through that, it'll be the most potent because I'm using not only my own to tap into what's currently happening, but also then I'm looking into the overall of it entirely. And so the way that I'm going to relate to the moon is going to be different than somebody who has like maybe a fire moon or an air moon, because they need to use different things to tap into it differently than I might, which is why I say these lists are not for you to use specifically verbatim in what anybody gives you, because a lot of your own makeup is going to determine what's going to be the most conducive for you and what intuitively you might be drawn to already naturally and not even know, right? So then, use that information to tailor activities to you by using that sign as ways to embrace those energies. Moon bathing, just sitting out under the full moon and soaking up all its energy is a really good way to tap into it. It's kind of like the opposite of sun, sitting under the sun. You get a suntan, right? But under the moon is like charging you up full of her goodness as well. There's lunar aromatherapy, or you can use incense. So use certain scents to anchor yourself to your rituals or intentions, because everything has a meaning or a property behind it. And so depending on what you want to enhance at the time, you can use that and help you connect again with the moon. Body sign alignment. So different signs rule different parts of our bodies, and by seeing which sign your moon is in, you can then look at the body part it rules and come up with ways to adore or pamper that part. So different people's signs, whatever sign that your moon is in, there's going to be a ruling body part that you can then connect with, and maybe that's the one that you need love with the most at that time, or when the moon is in certain positions, okay? Another thing you can do is lunar cacao ceremonies, which is like, instead of just being out bathing under the moon, you can have a cacao with you and you can sip it and think and share or write intentions to amplify. What the cacao does, it opens up your heart space, and one of the best things for manifesting is having an open heart, because you want part of manifesting and changing is knowing you're deserving and worthy, and like a large part of what we're doing with these things is returning back to our clear, healed, divine state, which already is saying that you're already good as you are. And if you don't have a lot of love, if your heart chakra is really closed, you won't believe that about yourself. And therefore, that means you're not going to be returning back to your whole and healed state, because you're not going to believe that you're able to, or that you're worthy of that. Right? And so part of just this work is just knowing that you deserve to feel good, and that you deserve to feel love, and that it's okay for you to absorb all this stuff in, and that it doesn't matter what the outer world looks like. It's about you, and knowing that you, as that divine being that you are, is good enough, right? And so then you can make lunar or moon potions, healing elixirs. This is like that drink that I was talking about, like where you put a cup out and on top of a thing of affirmations. That's I classify as a healing elixir. Pop a little crystal in there. You can do any kind of crystal. Different crystals are good for different things. I'm not going to tell you which one to use, but different ones, that's going to also amplify the energy that you're charging it up with, right? And so different crystals are going to be better for different moon cycles, because they're going to amplify naturally what is already happening in that moon cycle. But you can do more than just a moon elixir, okay? So this is on a new moon. You could create bath bombs, or you could create oils or bombs, any kind of elixir. These are energies that you want to bring into that whole cycle up until that full moon or the next new moon. And it's a way to continuously be building off that intentions that you use, like continuously like nurturing yourself with the energy of what you planted for intentions. And then one of the last things I have here is shadow work. So this is especially true for like Scorpio, right? Shadow work is something where I am going to do an episode on it, so I'm not going to go too deep into it today. But shadow work is probably one of the most important things that you can do in any self-development. That's usually what you're going to therapists or healers and stuff for, is to talk about these things that are in your shadow. And a lot of the time we're not aware that that's where they are, but the whole point is that they're hidden to us, and that's where our patterns lie. And so until we reveal ourselves, these patterns and these habits, they continue to run amok in our life. But what's amazing is a lot of the time our shadow, a lot of the time is where the things we've rejected. All right. And so our shadow holds all these things rejected. We think it's a lot of the negative stuff. Like when you first get into shadow work, it's like, I feel ugly, I'm mean, I'm cruel, you know? But the shadow actually holds a big part of your untapped potential. And that's where our inner gold is. This one lady, she calls it that. And that is where almost it is so scary. The potential is so grand and amazing that we have like shut it off. And we've been like, I can't look at that. I can't be that. And that's where that love comes in, right? Knowing you're capable of having these amazing levels is a big part of it. Because that's largely why our shadow is that way, is it's shut down things and has turned us away from things because it feels it's not worthy of them, or not deserving, or not approved of, right? Like me being somebody who talks loud and wanting to take up space and being a positive person, I was told to shut up most of my life. So for a long time in my shadow was this person that could be a healer, could be a teacher, was talkative, had a powerful voice. There was something that I thought was wrong with that, right? And there was something in me that had to recognize that that was my inner power. That was my inner gold, you know? And sometimes it'll be in the people that you're drawn to. Sometimes that's your biggest indicator of what is in your shadow, is these people that you really love. You just love so many little amazing ways about them. And you are blind to seeing you have those same qualities. And you're sitting there wishing you had them. And the whole reason you wish you had them is because you push them into your shadow, and your shadow is trying to illuminate to you, you have these too. Welcome this back for yourself, and know this is already part of you. And then when you start doing that, you start getting to embrace life in a completely different way, because it's by eliminating the shadow that our shadow has the power over it that it does because we have ostracized it, okay? And then it's half the battle is us trying to keep it behind that shadow wall. It wants to come into the light. The more that you bring this stuff into the light, the more you can recognize that you can live in harmony, because you don't have to keep things bottled up anymore, and you can actually just be in a flow of authenticity and acceptance with yourself. Like, yeah, I can be a terrible person sometimes. I am not perfect, but I am not nearly as terrible as other people out there, and there is something nice about that. But there is something good to know about the fact that I know that I'm not perfect, and I'm not trying to be, But there is this way that I'm perfectly in these things and I'm proud of myself for them, versus being like, I can't be in these things because I should feel shame or guilt because other people don't accept me and other people don't think this or they think that. And like, women aren't supposed to know knowledge. Women aren't supposed to talk about stuff. Women aren't supposed to, like all this stuff I could put on myself, right? And so even me having ADHD and a touch of autism, right? Like, oh, she couldn't do a lot of that stuff. She has these things, right? Like, there's a lot of ways that we can bog ourselves down, and that all falls in the shadow. And so when we do a lot of work in this, and it's especially potent around like the dark moon phases. So like before that new moon, that balsamic and waning crescent, those are going to be the most potent times for us, because in that is a liminal space, that womb space, and you're already in the shadows. That's why a lot of people fear wintertime or fear doing like the deep dive into themselves, is because they fear what's lurking in the shadow. But the more that you come into harmony with it, the less it's a beast and the more it can be a friend. I'm not scared of my demons anymore. They are my friends. And anything that I was put in my shadow, even the ugliness of myself, at some point it served a purpose that now I can welcome and know that it doesn't have to control my life, but I am not scared of it either. Right? And it's by this fear and withholding and like keeping it bottled up that it gives us that most power. And that's what the moon is doing, is it's trying to eliminate all this hidden stuff in our conscious and subconscious from creating these patterns that actually run us instead of us being able to run ourselves. All right? And so the more we do work with these shadow, the more that we can actually step into our light. And that's the truth of it, is you will find your inner gold the more you dig into that shadow. And I highly recommend everybody to do a lot of shadow work. The only problem with shadow work is it is very hard. It is very difficult. One of the reasons people do not like mushrooms or bad trips is because you do not control drugs, right? And the drugs take you, the healing modality has to take you where you need to go for healing. And some of that is very, dark territory. And the reason is because light needs brought in there. So whenever people get worried about that, like, I understand, because I've had my own, and they are horrible. But I am forever changed after I face those things. And the more we can face those and understand that even if they are, bad in essence, they are healing. The only thing that's bad about them is the fact that we unwelcome them. Like, we try to control things. And the only problem with that is that's why the shadow even exists. We ostracize part of ourselves because we were told long ago that these things weren't welcomed. And also belittling ourselves into believing part of these things were true about us and ourselves. And so a lot of negativity has been built up in it. But part of that is just coming into like harmony with yourself and recognizing that even if there is badness waiting in there, it's never actually really that bad, These are all natural things that we can feel, and the only way to really deal with them is by highlighting them. It's really easy for these patterns to keep doing what they do if you keep ignoring that they're there. So shadow work, very important. Most of moon work is going to be about that, because the releasing, right? You have to admit what you need to release. You have to surrender that and let it go, and that is part of the shadow work. And even in part of the shadow work is finding out what you actually dream of, because the shadow is the darkness. It's not bad. What happens in the dark? Space is in the dark. Vast limitness. That's where the womb is. Life is created. It is not scary. It is a beautiful place to be. And that's why working with the moon is such a beautiful place to be, is because it is something that isn't so much tangible, but it is that mystical, magical, unknown area where anything and everything could be true. And we decide what we're going to pull out of there. We decide what's going to stay in there. And even when we pull out the things that we're not maybe the most proud of, being honest with ourselves will always get us somewhere further, and it will loosen the grip of those things that once had a much harder control, because those things, it's way easier for them to control us when we're oblivious to them than it is when we shine a light and be like, gotcha. So anyway, moon, incredibly important and powerful. I would say it's something out of all of the things that I keep with monthly, the moon is something that I always always care about and always am looking into. I do weekly tarot reads, and even when I do my weekly tarot reads, I usually highlight what days are going to be good for certain energies. I usually take notice of what energy is mostly going to be out through the week, because sometimes we might be in a zodiac sign for 3 days of the week, and then the rest of it might be 3 days of another. And so we're only going to have 2 zodiacs that are largely affecting us with moon energy. And sometimes they're going to be calling me to do something more than others. And sometimes I don't look at it at all. And I'm not hard on myself. I don't have to. There are some parts of the month or weeks or days that we are called to look into these things because they're going to be the most powerful for us to take notice of them, okay? All right, so that's really all I have for you today. But the most important thing that I could take away from this is just to recognize the importance of the things, even when you don't think that they really matter. There is something influencing you, and paying attention to more and more of it. These little things just help you can not narrate, but navigate your life, because a lot of this we don't control, right? There are some parts that we can, and that's how we can use the moon to dictate some of those. But we can also use the moon to show us how we have to go with the flow maybe a bit more, and to release some control, because this is what's going to be at play this week. And it's going to be more about just seeing how that comes up for you and then navigating when it does. But if you're completely like me, I didn't do my tarot this week, right? And so when I don't do a tarot, it's usually meaning a big transformation is happening, a big rebirth is happening. Did I know the full moon was coming up? No, because I did not do the research, because normally I do the research when I'm doing my tarot and everything. Even though I have lunar lists right in front of me, I did see all of a sudden that one was coming up, but it wasn't until after. I usually do my tarots on Sunday or something like that, so I know what's coming up for my week ahead. So when these things happen, like when you do or don't do something, it's really interesting even too, right? Because you start to recognize you're a little bit more tapped in than you think. We are not as alone here. It's not all random as much as we think it is. A lot of this stuff is very consistently linked. And the more we stop, like, almost like putting it off, like I said at the beginning of the video, just like tossing it to the side, we can really start to understand that this place, this world that we have, we can get a lot more influence and support than we think we do. And when we utilize all the tools, it does create the most perfect environment for us to have such a growing, like a safety growing kind of space, which if you go into any kind of therapy or counseling, one of the most conducive things you can have is that safety environment, that containment that feels safe. And so when you have a lot of these tools, you create that for yourself and you learn, and it's a lot easier for you to not be led astray. It's a lot easier for you to not be manipulated, like especially when it is highly volatile. Sometimes it's easy to get carried away with it. And I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying that if you know about it, then you can understand why you might be and how that links back into a lesson and how you can change that for the future. And so doing the moon work, doing just moon work in the beginning, that was the only thing that I did, was just paying attention to the moon and writing my release with the full moon and my intentions, settings for the new. And then I would care about what I would do for the month with my new moon, and then I would release whatever kind of struggles I came up with since then, or anything that I noticed for themes that I don't really like that were even before that moon, And then I would use that moon also to show about what energy in that moon maybe might also inspire me for what to release in general, even if I haven't dealt with it. It's something I don't want to deal with in the future too. And so it was the very basic, but it was one of the first ways for me to hold myself accountable in seeing, like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And so this is what I want to feed into. And when I'm feeding into this, I know I'm feeding into something I don't want to create. And so it started holding me accountable. It started making a lot more discipline, but in a way that felt bigger than just writing in a journal, like carefree with no backing to it. It helped me create structure and routine because you're basing it off that cycle, but also because you could see it activating. And now in now, in where I'm at now, I don't even need to be writing my list for me to know what energy is happening, because of just naturally what's happening in my life. And then all of a sudden, the moon will come up and I'll learn about it. I'm like, accurately already happening. And that's why sometimes for some moons, I don't need to do anything. Because guess what? That week, I already was preparing. I was already doing all those steps. I already naturally was already involved in that. And so now I just get to see what happens after that and live again into the moment, into the manifestations, rather than trying to have to dictate it so hard. So I highly recommend looking into the moon. I hope some of this information really helped you, because the moon is such a beautiful thing. I can't wait to go look and bathe under it tonight. But I hope you all have such a great day. And yeah, if there's anything that you could suggest for something that you know, or anything special for yourself for the moon, comment below. But even if not, that's totally fine. Just recommend that, again, take this as a unique, you're an individual, okay? Even though this is all collectively, the moon is always guiding you specifically for you too, like in your own individual way. And the more you can create a partnership with it that way, the more you can start seeing the moon in its phases as a friend for you, an accountability partner, right? And not even in a harsh, like, you didn't do this kind of way, in a like, let's go with the flow, and this is what I'm gonna naturally inspire you to be doing. And if you work with her, right, she can really help you manifest things really quickly, and she can really help clear things out of you really quickly. I've done a lot of cord cuttings in my life. I've done a lot of releasings. The releases are probably my favorite. I was born on a new moon, so like, I'm always ready to start fresh. I'm always ready to be planting something new, and I'm very quick to cut things out, because part of the new moon, it requires you having to make new space. You have to clear your ground to plant new seeds. And if you don't understand that, then it's really hard for you to be manifesting new stuff, because you need to make room. So look into it. Hopefully you can start seeing some themes in your life and how the moon affects you. But even if not, at least you know a little bit more about the moon and how it can be used, or how it speaks to us. And that's pretty amazing to me. So take care. Till next time. Bye.